Hello. So today we're going to talk a little bit about JavaScript. So I opened up codepen.io and created a new pen. And first thing that I'm going to show you is how to create comments. So to create a single line comment, and use comments if you want to sort of explain some of your code so you remember what you're trying to do. If you want to write a note for another developer. And for a variety of reasons, you'd probably want to write some comments for documentation purposes. So for a single line comment, this is a comment. You might have something like that. For a multi-line comment, if you have a more verbose comment, so something like this, what you would do is you'd put slash with an asterisk and asterisk slash. And then this is going to comment anything that's in between that, right? So that's a comment. Next thing that we're going to show you is how to print out stuff. So printing out stuff, that's good for like debugging if you want to see something show up on your console. This is your console. So if I want to, say if I create a string, right? And to create a string, you use quotes. But this isn't really doing anything. You know, it's just in the JS. So if I want it to actually show up in the console, I would say console log, right? And now it should show up right there in the console. Here, this area over here, this is the what would be considered sort of like the web page, right? So if I wanted to actually write something on the screen, the console's it's not very. It is good for debugging purposes, but this is what will actually show up on the screen. If you want to have something show up on the screen, you would write document.write. Oops. So quotes and Alex Brites, right? And now you'll notice that here it says Alex Brites. So what we notice here is I've created Alex Brites twice, right? Something you can do if you find yourself having to write something multiple times is you can create a variable. And what that means is I want to store a value in memory and then reuse it, right? So I could say var, so var is short for variable, and you can call this whatever you want. So we're going to say full name equals, and I'm going to say my name, right? Then here, instead of this console log, I could just remove that, and I could say full name full name. And now nothing is really going to change because it's going to be referencing the same thing. However, now let's just say I wanted to change my name to say John Brites, right? Now everything changed to John Brites, right? So this is good because I don't have to go and change it a million times and do all that sort of stuff. Okay, so that is a variable. Another thing here with variables, which is interesting, is so right now I have full name. However, I want to change my name back to Alex Brites, right? And you'll notice that now here you'll see Alex Brites. And this console just kind of, the stuff that's latest is the one that's at the bottom. It just kind of goes over and over again. Oops, bring that up again. Just clear this. Okay. Okay. So now if you notice, I set it to John Brites, but then I changed it to Alex Brites. Also, what you'll notice is I only have the var here once. You only need to instantiate your variable once, and then you can just call it without the var. Okay, so that's variables. The other thing I want to talk about a little bit is data types. So let's just remove all this, and we'll just say, put a little comment. I want to talk about data types, right? So there's a few types of data types. There's primary data type. There is what's the other one called? Composite data types, and then there's just like special data types, right? So primary data types are things like strings and numbers, right? Composite data types are things like objects and arrays. And special data types are things like called like not a numbers, undefined, let's see, you say, etc. We'll talk about those later. Actually, another primary data type outside of string numbers is also booleans, right? So let's go through each of these. So the one we already talked about was strings. So full name equals, you know what, let's just do I, so not to confuse anything. So I equals, just say my string, right? So this is one type of data type, and the way I could see what's going on here is I can say, just say console.log, right? And you can say type of I, right? And you notice type of is string. The other thing you'll notice is if I say var I equals 100, it's still a string. And that's because it's using quotes, right? Now, if I wanted to create a number, I could just remove these, and now you'll notice it becomes a number, right? Now, there's different types of numbers, right? This here is what you'd call an integer. There's also, so let's just call this int, and then we can call, then we have like a float, right? And what that is, it's like 100.1, something like that, right? Then there's hex, which is like 0xFF, right? And I mean, so those are a few different types of numbers. Now, if I put type of for any of these, it's going to still come up as a number. But I'm going to show you something here. So like hex is going to still come up as a number. But if I actually print out what hex is, you'll notice that it says 255. So it recognizes that this value here is indeed a number. So those are numbers. Now let's talk about booleans. So boolean, say I equals, and there's two states, true or false. So we'll just say true, right? And then we can do the same thing, console.log I, right? And you'll see it says true. Just clear this up again, right? And if I say false, then it'll say false. So one thing about a number, though, is, which is kind of interesting, is true is actually equal to the number 1. And you can see this if I say I plus I equals, you'll see it sometimes comes up as 2. So true equals 1, false equals 0. So that's that. The other ways to look at different sorts of booleans is if you use some operators, right? So let's remove that. Let's clear this. What if we say 10 is less than, or 12 is less than 11? 12 is less than 11, you'll notice it says false. And if I said greater than, then it'll say true. If I said equals, and with equals, you would do two equal signs. It'll say 12 is actually indeed not equal. Is 12 equal to 11? No, it's false. If you want to say not equal, then you would use an exclamation point there. And now it would say true. So we're going to get into this type of stuff when we look at conditions, because this is exactly what you would start to do when you start thinking about various conditions in your scripts. But that's a good primer for booleans. Okay, so that's that. Objects. So what is an object? So an object, the easiest way to write an object is you just say my object equals, all you do is two curly brackets, right? And let's just do console.log my object, and you'll see down here it says object with a little curly bracket, right? Now we can start to add things in here. So what objects are, it's a way to sort of combine a bunch of variables, which they're called properties in objects, into one container, right? So I can say first name equals Alex. Oops, sorry. This is actually a colon, and then last name B-R-I-T-Z is Brites. And now you'll see this is my object, right? Now, what I could do here is, let's just say I just want to pull first name. So here where it says console log, let's clear this. I'm going to say my object dot first name. And you'll see just Alex comes up, right? If I want to type my entire name, like the full name, what I could do is I could start to concat my string, right? So I have first name and I have last name. So I can say my object dot first name, and then you'll write a plus sign, two quotes, put some space, add another plus sign, and say my object plus last name, right? And then you'll see it comes up as Alex Brites, right? So this is a way to create strings by concatenating them together. So that's that. Now let's do another thing here. I'm going to do my array. So what's an array? So an array is it's a list of items, right? So let's just say, we'll call this hobbies, right? And so we'll say one of my hobbies is jogging. Another is say walking, and another is say coding, right? So these are hobbies, right? However, one thing that I could do is, instead of, actually before I show you that, in order to capture one of these, like just say if I want to get jogging or walking, what you do here, let's get rid of this console.log, bring it down here, right? What you would do for hobbies is you would write hobbies, right? And then you'll see all of them come up over here, but I just want walking. To get walking, what you would do is you would write 1. So why 1? So arrays start off with the index of 0. So 0, if I were to type 0, then it would give me jogging. So 0, 1, 2, right? So that's that. Another thing that you can do is, so I have, so this is hobbies, right? Let's just say I wanted to add another thing. So I could say hobbies, and then you can add these little square brackets, right? And right now I said 0, 1, 2, right? So the first thing I could do is like, you know what, walking is actually, I don't like walking. I can say 1 equals sleeping, right? And now you'll notice over here, it says jogging, sleeping, coding, right? So you could do that, or you can also add, if I say, so it's 0, 1, 2, and I add a 3 here, and I say, and I like, what would you say, talking, right? Now you'll see that there's another one added to this. You can do similar stuff over here with the objects too. The way the object works, let's just move back to the object over here. So we have my object, right? We talked about how to get the first name, right? But let's just say I wanted to get, I wanted to add middle name, right? To do that, I would have to say my object dot, and say middle equals, and my middle name is Miguel, right? So now, if you look at my object, it says Miguel was added there, right? So here's something interesting. Let's just grab all of this and let's paste it over here. So let's paste it under Miguel, right? So I want to add these hobbies into this object. And in order to do that, all I need to do is grab my object, remove the var, put a dot. And now hobbies should show up here. It's not showing up. Oh, grab that, grab that, grab that. Okay, there you go. Okay, so now hobbies is showing up. Oh wait, All right, so this. Okay, so what was happening was it was adding sleeping and talking into my object 1 and 3, but we wanted to add it into hobbies 1 and 3. So now it's inside of hobbies. So it's my object, hobbies, index 1. So which takes us to the next sort of question. Like if I want to pull now, I want to pull sleeping, right, from there, I would have to say my object, right? So if I want to get the name, say first name, right? And it's going to give me Alex. If I want to get hobbies, and I say hobbies, it's going to give me all the hobbies. If I want to get the second hobby, then I press 1, and then I get sleeping. So that's your objects and arrays. And we'll go deeper into objects and arrays probably next class. But that's it for now. Okay, so in terms of, let's look at some other numbers that we have too. So let's go over here. Did forget a couple numbers. So there are another few numbers that are interesting to know. So console.log, right? So one thing that we can do is, what if we write something like 1 divided by 0, right? Which actually, before I do that, let's show you some math, right? So one thing we could do with numbers is say 21, oops, 21 plus 5, right? So that's going to give you 26. So you can do math with these numbers together. Obviously, you could do minus 5. You can do divided by 5, and you'll see it's 4.2. You can do multiplication is actually this asterisk, so it's 105. And then the other operator you could do is called modulo, which is that. And you'll see that's 1 comes up, and what that means, it's a remainder. So it's divided. So 21 divided by 5, it has a remainder of 1. This is really good, if you do things like grid systems and different things like that. There's lots of reasons why you would use something like that. Okay, so we have that. However, what if I were to say 1 divided by 0? So this is infinity, right? So this is another call, and if I put negative 0, then you'd get negative infinity, which is another data type. Others are, if I were to say, like what is, let's say y, right? And y, let's see, it's not coming up here. For whatever reason, it's not showing up in CodePen, but y would be undefined. So var y equals, you could say it's undefined, and it'll show up, right? But basically that means that there is nothing in this object, in this variable, right? Now, interestingly enough, you could also say null, right? And null will come up as there being nothing in the object. However, what happens is null actually is it is like an object of nothing. So if you say type of null, you'll see it comes up as an object. However, you say type of undefined, it'll come up as undefined. So although they do have, they're both nothing, null is an object of nothing, whereas undefined is just nothing. Okay, so let's see, what else do we have? Yeah, I think that's it for now in terms of data types. If you have any questions, please let me know.